The time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
I do have that feeling that I lived through partition that was a very tumultuous time. Yeah.
Yeah. 1941 to 1948.
Perfect.
That's what you know. 1939 to now. Oh, yeah. Oh my God, that's me and Yusuf. Daddy, Mummy, Bombay.
I was born in 1932 in Ludhiana, in Punjab, eastern Punjab, which is now in India. I still remember that house. I visited that part of Ludhiana when I went to India in 1960 or 1961. And the house is still there. It looks the same. It was called Rose Cottage. It had a stone front and it had 2 stories inside. But there were, at that time the rooms were quite small. In the middle there was a courtyard. It was quite happy.
That is my grandfather.
So that's your grandfather in the middle?
Mm-hmm. That's my father, that's my uncle. This is September 1935.
Well, my grandfather had a vegetable stall in the market in Ludhiana. So he had 3 sons. One of them wound up in Calcutta, that was my father. The other one wound up in Delhi and the third one wound up in Bombay. Finally, they all came together in Calcutta. That was my father, because he had decided. He had moved to Bombay and then Delhi and then Calcutta. He had looked it over in Bombay, he had looked it over in Delhi. He finally decided on Calcutta. He set up a printing press and a biscuit factory. We were financially quite well off.
Oh my, look at that. 1938, 1939.
So
that's the sister who's dead.
What was her name?
Khurshid.
Khurshid. And that's you and...
Me, Yusuf.
You and Dad.
He had a sense of humor, but with his children he was sort of, I'm your father, you're my son, you do what I tell you. When we moved over to Karachi, up to that time he was a very successful young man. But then as the things started going down in Karachi, his health started to deteriorate. So ultimately, his last days were not good. My mother belonged to Philor, which is about 11 miles from Ludhiana. Her father was a Hakim, which is a local doctor. But he was a renowned Hakim. But she was a very courageous lady, and even with the conditions that we were living in, she never gave up hope. But she used to be able to make ends meet with whatever she had.
That's Mom and Dad in Calcutta. Yeah. This was probably 1945 or 1946.
She had 2 sisters. The husband of one was killed in 1947 when he was trying to come over to Pakistan. And his wife, who was my mother's sister, after a number of years, my mother found out about her. I think through relatives or through some correspondence with different people, she found out about them and then brought her over to Karachi from somewhere in Punjab. The other one wound up in Lalpur, And their sons were working with the Lalput cotton mills. The other one is still alive, and the third one, nobody knows where he is.
That was in Darjeeling.
What were you doing in Darjeeling?
We used to go there every summer while we were in Calcutta.
So is that a summer
That's the hill station.
While I was on the way to the United States, she died. While I was flying, my mother died. Because when I got here, my friend whose telephone number I had given to Yusuf, your father, he had telephoned my friend and told him that tell Amin to call me as soon as he gets there. But she had not accepted my departure to the United States. I was their eldest son. She didn't want the oldest boy to leave her. That was the reason. Because I was the one who took her to the doctors, who took her wherever she wanted to go. I was the one who used to do it. We could feel that there was a sense of not being free enough. Well, the British were colonialists, plain and simple. I mean, their only sure bet was that try and get as much as possible out of this country, regardless of what it takes. But they maintained law and order. They were quite adamant when it was considered a law and order problem. They wouldn't tolerate any illegal activities. But apart from that, they didn't care much. Up to 1945, during the war, up to the end of the war, it was quite peaceful, quite peaceful. But there was always this feeling, for example, during the football matches, the Hindus would be rooting for the Hindu team, the Muslims would be rooting for the Muslim team. Generally, they got along okay, generally. Tension started rising in 1945. And in 1946, I remember on the 16th of August 1946, we had this thing called the Great Calcutta Killing, when Hindus slaughtered Muslims and Muslims slaughtered Hindus. And that was a terrible time. That was a terrible time. The people in Calcutta believed that the Muslims had been killed in Bihar, which was the next province adjacent to Bengal. So they sort of, in revenge, started the killings on the 16th of August. And then the Hindus, in revenge to that, started killing Muslims. You had corpses littered over most of the streets. I saw them. The schools had all been closed, so we had to stay home. But we could look out the windows and we could venture out into the street for short periods of time. In Hindu areas, the corpses were Muslim, and in Muslim areas, the corpses were Hindu. Those 2-3 days were really bad. Gandhi had a good heart. He said, I'm going to fast unto death until these strikes stop. And that was a great help towards stopping those killings. So since then, since the middle of 1946 until 1947, constantly you had this clash between Hindus and Muslims. Up to that time, I believed that we could live with the Hindus. And then the things that happened in Calcutta made me more and more Muslim-minded. The atmosphere inside the house was fine because on the ground floor, they were all Hindus and they were quite friendly with us. But our father had also said, be careful of these people. Don't allow them to come up whenever they want and you go down whenever you want. Just be careful. But they were good people. They didn't, there were no sectarian feelings among us. There used to be discussion. We used to talk about India and Pakistan, and they always used to say, Pakistan is not feasible. So I converted. I decided not to be a congressman, but to be a Muslim leaguer. Because in Calcutta, the Muslims were a very large minority. You couldn't play around with them. They had their own schools, they had their own mosques, and they had their own way of living, which was absolutely different from the Hindus. Okay. They spoke to the Hindus, they got along with them. But I remember whenever we wanted to shop, we used to prefer going to Muslim areas to shop instead of going to Hindu areas. I mean, in Calcutta, you had it in the air. You could feel it. You could feel that Pakistan is coming. You could feel that Hindus and Muslims are not friends of each other. You could just feel it.